Hello, football fans. Welcome back to Week 12 of the 2023 season for the Scuffed Football Podcast. This is Noah. I'm Ted. We're here again covering this week in football. I want to start by talking some quarterbacks. First off, we got to talk about injuries because we got a couple big pieces of news since we recorded last week. Obvious place to start is Joe Burrow. If I watch that clip of his limp wrist not throwing a football on the sideline one more goddamn time, I'm gonna fucking vomit. I've seen it 1,000 times. I know he has a wrist problem. All right, let's move along with it. I guess my question is then with the Bengals, like, how competitive can they still be if they're this close in the division? Obviously losing Burrow hurts, but like, we've never seen Jake Browning since Washington. I mean, we really don't know what he's gonna look like.
Yeah, I mean, definitely losing Burrow. I mean, his production, his chemistry is not going to be replaced. I don't really know how I feel just like saying that they can keep competitive. I mean, obviously they have other star pieces that they can rely on. But I mean, again, there's only so much that they can do as well. I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, the Bengals should be at least, be able to kind of be in there, but I don't believe they'll be like too competitive. I don't see them going and winning like a wild card right now.
I guess it's tough, right? Because like that last wild card spot in the AFC is super competitive, right? I mean, shit, the Steelers are last in every single category on offense, and they would still hold a playoff spot if the playoffs started today, right? Like, so I guess it's interesting for me that like they're not that far out of it. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not like we have strikes against their new quarterback. It's not like he's not throwing to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And like, you can say "and" about 70 fucking times to get through the Bengals offense for all the good pieces to throw to. Like, I don't see any reason to count them out. I guess I kind of want a game or two before I decide, like, how well that they could fight for that last spot. But like you said, obviously Joe Burrow is significantly better than most other quarterbacks in the league. Losing him hurts, right? But I it's hard for me to completely and totally count them out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I see. But, I'm hoping for the Bengals' downfall right now. So
Similarly, Deshaun Watson is out for the year. I don't believe that was the case as we were talking by the time we recorded last week, but whether we mentioned it or not, Deshaun Watson's done for the year. Obviously Cleveland still won, but their offense did not look as good as it did the week before. Man, I don't know. Again, super competitive in the division. The defense is their bread and butter. What does losing Deshaun do for them, especially given the sample we've seen from Watson this year?
I mean, for them, we all knew it was going to be a really, again, another slugfest, right? So, I mean, Steelers do have a decent defense. I'm not like too convinced that, Dorian Thompson can actually lead this team. I mean, but again, we'll have to see this week. Just because I think he had a hard matchup. So if he struggled, I mean, maybe it's not entirely just him. So, yeah, that's what I'm expecting to see, a better game with an easier defense, and we'll see kind of where the Browns are after that game.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, the Steelers' defense is solid enough. All their games are ugly. Like, it's exactly what we expected to see from this game. I don't think that should come as any surprise to anybody, but I do think that, like, Cleveland's going to struggle mostly because they don't have the same weapons for a backup quarterback to come in and succeed with that Cincinnati does, for example. Like, as good as their defense has been, I think their defense just needs to be like this much better to be able to hold that offense in games. I still think that, like, if I were to put money on it today, that Cleveland probably still makes the playoffs. Just the way that they've been beating people up. But I do think that path is quite a bit harder now.
Agreed. Yeah.
All right. Time to talk about the Giants, because that quarterback room is a fucking disaster. But we get Tommy DeVito now. I continue wanting to call him Danny DeVito just out of habit. So if I say it, just ignore me. Look, dude still lives at home. Dude's still making minimum salary. But he showed up and he won a ball game. So good on him. Even if it was only the Commanders, good on him. I know the Giants are still hopeful that they can, at least compete well enough to tell themselves that they're ready next year to make a run. Like, I think their early season record really puts them in a hole that I definitely don't think playoffs are realistic, especially looking at the rest of their schedule. But I think it's important for DeVito to kind of step into this role to let the Giants know what they have and what pieces that they need. It's so much harder to evaluate talent when your starter isn't on the field.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. I think that, we're going to see kind of like you said, what they have in that quarterback. I mean, like, if, DeVito is competent, they start winning games, right? And then they kind of start wondering, like, why did we pay Daniel Jones? Like, they could always trade him, like, you'll see exactly kind of what you have in your quarterback room. I actually kind of like this. So I'm hoping DeVito has a good few games.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see, because like they get another easy game this week, theoretically easy game against New England, but a slightly better defense than Washington does. And I really think that, like, it's important to decide, like, hey, if we're going to draft receivers this year, right? If they get a good draft pick and want what is it, Marvin Harrison Jr.? Or am I confusing him?
Yeah.
Okay. I said it came into my head and I second guessed myself. But yeah, like if that's the place where they end up drafting, right, where you can go and get a receiver like that, like, is that more important than offensive line or a piece on defense or whatever? And so I think it's super important that DeVito, like, shows how good their offense is. Like, if he looks really bad, that you can't evaluate the talent around him, I think that job only gets so much harder for the Giants front office that, like, I think it's important that they still push and compete, but we'll see what happens. Last quarterback injury I want to talk about is Aaron Rodgers, that fucking bum. I didn't think we were going to have to talk about him this year, but Noah sent me an article earlier that he is soft launching a return date of December 24th. Apparently he was jogging, prepares to return to practice in 2 weeks, and he thinks he can come back before Christmas. I think the man's insane. There's no way he actually, like, fully tore his Achilles. No shot.
I mean, I know you keep saying that, but this is supposedly like a new treatment. No one's really ever tested it, so maybe it's gonna be new. So we'll see.
I have no faith in the idea that you can completely tear your Achilles and be jogging in 10 weeks, 11 weeks. That's crazy, dude. I'll even believe that there was an injury of some sort, and that's fine. Like, I'm not here to say he's faking it altogether, right? Like, I promise I'm not that guy. But there's no way that it was a fully torn Achilles and he's back in 11 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, again, he was saying he's pushing it as hard as he can go, but, it also does depend on if the Jets are even, within, a wild card spot, which right now they're not. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'd like to see the progress. Like, I'd like a video of it. That'd be great. If we could really see what was up. But yeah.
Well, and what makes it even more crazy, though, is that, like, this week, after 10 weeks of bumfuck failure, they have got, like, all right, Zach Wilson, you're finally sitting, and we'll bring in some other schmuck, right? and just, like, the idea that can push us closer to a playoff spot, that the hero savior torn Achilles, Aaron Rodgers, can repair us from the last 3 weeks, right? Like, that's just an incredible mindset, I forget who I was talking to this past week where I was like, look, if you're a Jets fan, you have to be so mad. Okay. Kirk Cousins out for the year. It takes less than 24 hours and they're trading for Josh Dobbs, who's won them 2 football games, one of which he didn't know the names of his receivers. Okay. Like, was it Cleveland that just signed Joe Flacco this week? They went, okay, we're down a quarterback or 2. Bring in a veteran and even if he doesn't play, they've done something, right? Like, there's movement in quarterback rooms that, like, there are teams trying to get quarterbacks who are less competitive than the Jets are, and the Jets are like, Aaron will be back eventually, and now he's killing himself to come back by fucking Christmas, dude. Like, I would be so mad to be a Jets fan seeing this as the progress. Like, this is the winning ways we can do it this year. And, like, what are you doing in New York?
No, agreed. Yeah, I mean, there's still other quarterbacks. Even, like, I know obviously Colin Kaepernick hasn't played in forever, but he's been sending his tape in, like, trying to, get another opportunity. So, like, even, people that we haven't thought about in years, like, playing a game, like,
they were showing
better than Zach Wilson.
They were showing RG3 throwing from like 30 yards out and hitting a palm tree, dude. He's still got a laser. I just don't get doing nothing. It blows my mind. But anyway, sorry, Jets fans. I don't mean to slander you or make you feel even worse, but it just all of this faith in Aaron Rodgers just drives me nuts, man. Let's turn to the flip side of the coin. Instead of talking about injuries and quarterbacks being done, let's talk about some quarterbacks who maybe have bounced back a little bit. And obviously for you, I see your Bills hat. I want to talk about Josh Allen. I said it last week. I'll be the first one to own it that I didn't think firing the offensive coordinator was going to be the end all be all solution. But I want to give Josh Allen his credit because he looked very good this week. The Jets defense is nothing to turn your head at, right? I mean, it's a good defense, and Josh Allen put on a hell of a performance. So I guess my long-lasting question is, how long does this last? Was this a good week, or is this something that we can see continue?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd love to see it, every week. But as of right now, I mean, I've seen, us lose quite a few games that we should have won. So I feel like for right now, I'm just gonna say, I don't know. I would love to just be able to just be like, yeah, it's going to happen this week against your Eagles and we're going to smoke your ass, right? And but I just don't know yet. I need to see more consistency, even if it was just firing the offensive coordinator. We'll see. But I'm happy for this week.
Yeah, what's incredible to me is that, I don't think firing your offensive coordinator makes your decision-making on the field better, right? I recognize that if the offensive coordinator, helps design the game plan or calls the plays or whatever, I'm not 100% familiar with the role he was occupying there, but, I guess the issue for me is that, so many of the turnovers Josh Allen has had this year are bad on-the-field decisions, and there's nobody talking in your ear going, throw it here now, right? That's an on-the-field decision. So I don't want to chalk this week up and this successful performance on they fired the offensive coordinator, but something changed because he made some real good decisions. I don't know what it is. I want to believe with the evidence that I have that this is not something that will just automatically continue after the firing. But this was a whole lot better. If it makes him feel better, he's more confident, he's making better choices. I don't see any reason it can't continue. I just the logic there tells me that I'm not seeing enough to tell myself it will continue.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to give my shout outs to Trevor Lawrence as well for turning things around this week. They looked awful 2 weeks ago. Losing 34-3 is embarrassing, but Trevor Lawrence, he had a good performance this week. I mean, I thought he played really well against the Titans.
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, we didn't see some of the better, other offensive pieces. I mean, we saw a lot of Calvin Ridley. We saw a lot of Trevor Lawrence. We didn't see so much as Etienne or even Ingram. So, I mean, the fact that they were still able to really kind of rely on Lawrence there was pretty good, and he performed pretty well. So I'm happy to see him round back into form.
Yeah, I kind of similar to Josh Allen. I guess I just want to see the consistency, right? I don't need, an MVP 500-yard performance every week for the rest of the year, of course, right? The dude's human. But I mean, I do think that if we can play even at this level, when all of his pieces get involved, I mean, the Jags, there's no reason the Jags couldn't win more games and be more competitive than they are instead of losing 34-3 to the Niners 2 weeks ago. The last quarterback I want to give my props to is Brock Purdy. An incredible statistic, a perfect passer rating. Good on him. What's even more impressive is that he's the first 49ers quarterback to do so with 20 or more pass attempts. I believe I remembered reading that both Joe Montana and Steve Young had done this, but with less than 20 pass attempts, which is crazy to me. The idea that you can throw 20 passes and be perfect, but I digress. No, Purdy looked really good, and he still wasn't satisfied. I thought he had such a good day. Was it 21 completions for 300-plus yards? That's incredible.
Yeah, no, I mean, agreed. I think he had that really good game. I mean, we saw it last week. But, he followed it up again, so we're seeing a little more consistency. And, yeah, I mean, perfect passer rating is, pretty perfect. I feel like he didn't, obviously he didn't make mistakes. He was doing everything right, and the whole team was clicking. So Absolutely. Good on him, even if I hope that they lose all of their games because I don't want to face him in the playoffs. All right. Just for a quick follow-up from last week, I want to bring up the AFC North. Obviously Joe Burrow's injury makes a difference, but they were still the bottom of their division. Losing the game doesn't help them. I'm going to ignore the Bengals for a second. I think the important parts here to talk about from this past week are Pittsburgh and Cleveland from their game against each other. Obviously it was a slugfest. Both of them are having issues.
sayonara, Matt Canada. I hope you never return to football. You're absolutely abysmal. I was telling Noah about a video I saw where he and Mike Tomlin hugged after a win, and Boswell came in the locker room behind him and is yelling at Matt Canada that it sure wasn't thanks to him. So it makes me very happy that even the Pittsburgh Steelers players are happy that Matt Canada's gone. There is genuinely nowhere for that offense to go but up. And not for any bias whatsoever, I want to see Kenny Pickett ball out this week without a bum-ass Matt Canada calling plays. So very excited for that. But I do think, all of that being said, that they did lose a significant amount of ground here, losing to Cleveland and a backup quarterback. I said it before that in this podcast that I think Cleveland will make the playoffs. They're going to take one of those wild card spots. But how much does this loss hurt for Pittsburgh? Do you see them making up the ground to stay in the playoff hunt?
I think for me, I think they're going to be just. I think the importance of this game was just more than just even like records. I think it's going to come down to. I believe that both of them will be like vying for that, and just because of the tiebreaker, like the Browns will get it, like even if they have the same record. Because again, I expect kind of the Steelers to kind of have like a better week. Maybe their offense starts clicking, and the Browns right now with their backup quarterback are going to be a little bit worse than where they were. So maybe they'll lose a few more games. But yeah, I think in the long run, come playoff time, this loss will actually end up helping the Browns get in, and it'll keep the Steelers out.
I'm kind of in the same boat. Pittsburgh, they're what, 6-4, 7-4? They've had their 5 success. They're 6-4. I guess just like 6-4 doesn't feel nearly as good as 6-3 does. And now knowing that like you need even more ground to cover to catch up to even Cleveland for one of those spots, I'm right there with you. That like I think this makes a big difference, especially because it's going to come down to wild card. I think I can feel pretty confident in saying that Pittsburgh is not going to catch Baltimore for a division. So yeah, that's not even slander, right? I mean, it's 3 games now. It's a lot more ground to cover when you consider tiebreakers and all of that. So it's tough, but I think this is going to have a pretty significant impact late season. Even if it's only seeding, there's going to be a difference. But that brings me to Baltimore. Does the game that we just watched, the injuries, all things considered, does that make Baltimore the favorites for the AFC North? Like, we talked about this literally a week ago that three teams could win the division. We brought up Cincinnati 2 weeks ago that like maybe they're an AFC favorite, and like, but now Baltimore feels, to me at least, far and away the best team in that division.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been both feeling pretty well about the Ravens in general, and their stock has been rising. They've been putting together some really good wins. So yeah, I think we were kind of like, it was mainly just the Bengals and Ravens, but yeah, I think them showing out here, even losing Mark Andrews, they showed up this week, and no, yeah, I agree. I think the Ravens are definitely the heavy favorites for that now.
It feels incredible to me to say that much of a gap has grown in just 1 week for me, right? But like, it's so hard for me to say anything otherwise. Like, even if I believe that Cleveland can steal a game or two off the Ravens by the season's end, like, that feels like a pretty wide gulf, man. It definitely didn't a week ago. Incredible to me. Getting into some games from last week, there are a handful of good games, handful of snoozers. The ones I want to talk about that we haven't previously mentioned yet. Let's start with Lions and Bears. This might have been my favorite game to watch this weekend. Maybe not the best game, but my favorite one to watch, because the best ones stressed me the fuck out. The Lions found a way to get it done late in the game. I didn't expect this game to be this close, but the Lions showed up both in late game offense and late game defense, and I was very impressed.
Yeah, no, I was pretty satisfied with this game. I'm not gonna lie, it was probably, again, one of my favorites as well of this weekend. It wasn't pretty, but I mean, we got there in the end. And again, the last, fourth quarter was pretty solid to watch. I think I was texting you throughout that, and I was just like, yo, this is crazy. Or maybe I texted you the next morning, but that was actually pretty wild. We saw a lot of things. I mean, obviously the Bears are better with Justin Fields, obviously. And then again, I mean, the Lions found a way to kind of pull that out and win. So they've shown that they can still come from behind. So I'm interested to see. I think their stock is rising as well.
It was also nice for me, at least, to see Detroit not give up after honestly a pretty bad first 3 quarters. Goff threw 3 interceptions, I believe. He almost lost me my fantasy week, that bastard. But he came back, like, even in the late game, he put together some solid drives in the fourth quarter, 3 touchdowns, still looked confident. Like, even giving up 3 turnovers, most weeks you lose games if you throw 3 interceptions. And they came back, they had resolve. Their defense showed up and caused that really late game safety to score even more and separate the gap. Like, I was super impressed with Detroit. Like, I think you and I both have been giving them credit this season that they look really good. But I mean, this game actually really impressed me, despite how tight it was. That, like, they do have the resolve that they're going to be scary in the playoffs, man. Going to Detroit is going to be a terrible place to play.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Next, I got Packers Chargers. There's a lot to unpack here. Chargers need help. Man, if I don't know if there's an over-under every week for receiver drops. Like, I don't know if you can gamble on a receiver's drops. But, dude, if anybody, if that does exist, you would, whatever bookie is willing to take that from you and you bet the over on Keenan Allen drops, it doesn't matter what the line was, you won. I watched him drop 2 different touchdowns that made this game look a whole lot different. All of their receivers had butterfingers. I thought Justin Herbert played immaculately. Like, that was one of the better quarterback performances I've seen all season long. And if I had $1 for every time it hit his receiver in the hands or the chest and they dropped it, dude, I could have paid to gamble away all of my money there. Absolutely unreal. And also kind of good for the Packers, I guess, being able to stay in it. They didn't play a great game, but they had the ability to at least win against a bumfuck Chargers team. There's so much in this game that, like, I'm just so confused by, like, how can this game turn out like that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, Chargers defense right now is a little thin, so I guess that allowed the Packers to kind of stay in, and I don't really have an excuse for them. But I mean, yeah, again, the offense with all their drops. I mean, I had Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert's my QB1, thank God, because he's always amazing. And dude, like, even like half the points that he got for me were just because he ran it himself. Like, he was so, like, I was watching the game, he was like getting mad with this team. I was like, all right, I kind of get it, like when your team drops this many, like, you kind of just gotta run and get frustrated, and so I'm surprised that we were like, Chargers were even in that game as much as they were, I guess, even with all of our mistakes. So yeah.
It's interesting to me too, because I mean, I've been hearing people calling for the firing of Brandon Staley for 3 years now, right? And grand scheme of things, if their season continues this way, I don't see him coming back next year, right? But it's interesting to me that, like, while I agree that he's kind of reckless in his game management decisions, I also can't even blame this week on him. Like, he allowed Justin Herbert to look really good, and his receivers just dropped so many passes. Much like we talked about with the OC in Buffalo, I don't know that switching head coaches means all of your receivers' hands aren't made of concrete. Like, that's not quite how that works. So it's incredible to me that the Chargers keep losing these tight games, given, like, the way that their talent is performing everywhere but the wide receiving core. It's unbelievable to me. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, if you take away some of these, close losses, ball bounces your way, like, they could be 6-4, 7-3. Like, some of these games were pretty winnable. It's just mistake prone.
Yeah, tough to correct that, I think, just with the volume of what's happening there. But last game I want to talk about, I can feel my blood pressure rising already, is Eagles Chiefs. You obviously knew we weren't going to skip this one. I was kind of surprised by how this game played. Not necessarily the way that it ended, but just kind of how we ended up where we ended up. First off, both defenses were absolutely unbelievably good. The Chiefs got to Jalen Hurts 5 times, and he is not an easy man to get in the backfield because he is so mobile. They shut down a lot of the run game, which has been a really strong suit for the Eagles all season long. And then their pass defense was better than I've seen it most of this year. Even coverage in the secondary was really good. Usually they rely on their pass defense to be Chris Jones beats you up in your backfield, right? Like, but even their coverage looked really good this week. So I want to give the Chiefs defense a lot of credit. The Eagles never really got going. I think Jalen Hurts ended with less than 150 total yards, including like passing and rushing, which I've never seen that. He probably had more than that in every game he played in high school. Like that's an incredible number to fall below. But the Eagles defense, I think, stepped up in a way that I personally wasn't prepared for. The secondary was really good. They caused 2 different red zone turnovers. For the most part, they shut down Travis Kelce. I know he had his touchdown, but I saw them covering him like glue. He didn't have any yards after catch, it felt like, in this game. I know that there were a couple of drops from the Chiefs that game really could have gone either way late, but I was pretty impressed that this was a defensive game instead of an offensive game.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. I think, when we think of both teams, we're not really thinking both, their defenses are the better part of them. But, both defenses really stepped up. I mean, again, to kind of keep both quarterbacks and, offensive pieces, like, just down, they shut down A.J. Brown, like, crazily. Like, I think it was, 1 reception for 8 yards? That was it.
Something like that.
It was like Devontae Smith was like the main, wide receiver too. But yeah, like you'd never see those stats, for these, star players. So yeah, no, I was very pleasantly surprised that both defenses stepped up. So
yeah, I do want to ask too, because like if you follow the gambling odds, both of these teams are their conference's most likely favorite to make it back to the Super Bowl, given their records, given the rest of their schedules. Like it wouldn't be impossible to believe that this is another Super Bowl game this year. I guess my question, I don't know if I can answer this one personally without being biased, okay? But if this does turn into the Super Bowl matchup again this year, what did we learn from this game that could give us an expectation to see them again in February?
I don't know. I mean, we'd have to look upon, the Super Bowl itself, but in a way, though, like even looking back at the Super Bowl would be different. Like 2 different teams still, they've lost some pieces, added some other pieces. So I don't really know. I feel like it's not a large enough sample to really, to judge upon, because I feel like, if they were to meet up again, I feel like both offenses would be clicking, just to get to the Super Bowl, you kind of would have to. So, I don't really see that, rematch happening as so much as like this exact rematch. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I can see the Eagles and Chiefs, but it won't be a defensive like output.
It's interesting to me because like if I were to take 1 unit from the Eagles, right? Like if I tell you can take 1 unit from the Eagles and make your perfect super team, right? It's the offensive line. Like, and I'm not thinking about it. As good as their wide receivers are, as good as the defensive line, as good as I think Jalen Hurts. No, it's the offensive line. And the Chiefs made them look like Swiss cheese, right? Like, it's hard for me to believe that if they faced each other again, that the Chiefs wouldn't do that again, right? But similarly, like, if you ask about the Chiefs, like, what's their bread and butter? It's quarterback, tight end, that you cannot stop Mahomes to Travis Kelce. And the Eagles did that pretty well. Like, I want to be able to say that, like, okay, I can't say it, but I want to say that, like, the Eagles beat them once, so if they met up again, the Eagles, of course, are the better team and they'll win, right? Because I don't know that the Eagles were the better team in this game, to be completely honest with you. But I guess it's just like all of the things that I expected from both teams didn't happen. So I don't even know that I could make a solid prediction, right? Like, and even having watched the Eagles win, right? If the Eagles and the Chiefs played again this week, I don't know that the gambling line would be any different. Like, I don't know that we wouldn't see Kansas City -3 again if we did it all right over again. It's so hard for me to pull things out of this game without acknowledging what we saw, because only the Chiefs have beaten up the offensive line of the Eagles this year. Only the Eagles have stopped Mahomes and Kelce in the way that they did. Not that Kelsey's having a great season. I get it. I'm not here to say that nobody else can, but like, even while getting targeted, he was double covered and stuck hard, right? Like, so it's super hard for me to pull something out of this game and say this will be important if we play them again, because what the fuck was that?
No, agreed. Yeah,
makes it super tough. All right, I think this will be pretty brief coverage, but all I've got left is fantasy and gambling. So fantasy, anything you're seeing this week, anything you're looking at as people get to playoffs?
No, man. Now I'm starting to look ahead, though. I'm looking at defenses, and special teams, and I'm seeing who they have as their, like, last 3 opponents, just kind of like seeing who has the easiest schedules, kind of picking up a piece that, you're thinking about in the future to play. Obviously by now you kind of know if you're in the playoff picture or not. So,
Yeah, I find it super fascinating. So we're at a point in time where like you can kind of start cutting reserve players. We're out of bye weeks, so there's not necessarily a need to play all of your backups, right? Obviously, it's important to have them in case of injury or whatever, right? And that's why you got a whole roster. But it is fascinating to me to see, like, especially in the quarterback picture, right? That like, how consistent do you trust your quarterback to be? How healthy do you trust your quarterback to be? Like, even Josh Allen owners who have been living rich for the past 2 or 3 seasons, right? Like, if he's your QB1, like, are you looking for a trade before the deadline because you don't know if you can trust him, right? Like, I think this year has been super challenging as far as injuries and consistency, especially that, like you said, looking ahead towards the playoffs, knowing who you want to play weeks 16 and 17. I think this year is so much more stressful.
Oh yeah, I agree.
All right, time to talk gambling. I'm just gonna bow down. Noah, if you put money on Noah's picks this week, you better thank this man for making you rich. My man went 12-2, and one of the 2 games he lost, he only missed by half a point. Houston won by 4, and the line was 4.5. Like he missed by half a point on one of those games. He was this close to 13-1. It's incredible to me. So props to him. Like I said, Noah's 12-2, which brings him to 78, 55-2. Ride this man's hot streak. I went 7-7 for 66, 67-2. We don't need to talk about it. Like I said, just follow Noah's picks, man. Just trail him. All right. This week, I also want to say that we both made our picks before we started recording so that we're not influencing each other's picks, because I don't need to just go, I'll fade Noah just because, and then he has another 12-2 week. So as always, lines are provided by FanDuel as of Wednesday. They are subject to change. Please gamble responsibly. Remember that we're not providing gambling advice, solely providing our picks. And if you or a loved one has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. We'll rip through these pretty quick because we've already got our picks, but Green Bay, Detroit. Detroit is a 7.5 favorite at home. I'll let you go first.
I went Lions on this one.
I did too. Detroit's record overall is pretty good on Thanksgiving, so that's a factor. And then Detroit was really good, and Green Bay was average in a win. So I got Washington and Dallas. Dallas is a 12.5 favorite.
Yeah, this is one I was kind of iffy on, but I expect, and I picked the Cowboys, disgustingly as that is.
I also took Dallas, but I think this was my hardest pick of the week, only because it's 12.5. Like, that's a big one, dude. And Dallas is kind of inconsistent. But San Francisco and Seattle. San Fran is a 7-point favorite on the road.
I actually ended up going with the Seahawks here, but just for the spread. I think they're going to be kind of close. I think, 7.5 is too much. So,
yeah, I took San Francisco just because I think the Niners have really turned it on the past 2 weeks. Seattle kind of feels a little bit flat to me, so I think 7 is a doable number for the Niners. I've got Miami and the Jets. Miami is a 9.5 favorite on the road.
Yeah, I went the Dolphins. I mean, just in general, we just saw the Bills beat up on them. I think Dolphins have the pieces to do it again.
Yeah, I'm with you again. I think Miami is a significantly better team. No reason for me to doubt them. But also the Jets switching quarterbacks this week makes this matchup even harder. So I think that's a pretty easy one. Also a short week because they're playing on Friday. Makes it even tougher to switch your quarterback now. But what do I know? New England and the Giants. Is this right? The Patriots are 3.5 favorites on the road? The fuck?
Yeah, I also went the Pats with this though as well, just because again, I expect a different team to show up now that they've benched Jones for now.
I went for the Giants for the same reason. Well, similar reasons, I guess. I think that like the Patriots having a benched quarterback, right, makes a difference, gives them a hard week, and I think DeVito starting to feel comfortable with his third week under center, like it's going to give him an easier time. Plus, they're playing at home, and New England kind of blows. All right, we get into some really tight spreads here, so if you continue to hear 1.5 out of me, I promise it's correct. I got Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. Pittsburgh is a 1.5 favorite on the road.
Yeah, I actually ended up taking the Steelers on this one as well. Just again, I think Bengals losing, Joe Burrow hurts. I think, Steelers are going to actually be decent on offense with the new, offensive coordinator. So, yeah.
I agree with all of your rationale there, and I wanted to pick Pittsburgh so bad, but I'm going to take Cincinnati. I think Jake Browning was a pretty good quarterback in college. I have no reason to doubt him. They still have the offensive pieces, and I guess there are enough question marks about what Pittsburgh does to fill that offensive coordinator hole. Not a lot of faith long-term in Pickett, although he was my boy in college, and I will support him until he dies. It was so hard for me to make that pick, but I took Cincy.
I mean, just remember, Steelers is always a slugfest, and it's only 1.5. Like, that's all I'm saying.
I get it, but if it's gonna be tight and you're giving Cincinnati 1.5, like that only works in my favor here. All right, I got Carolina, Tennessee. Tennessee is a 4-point favorite at home.
Yeah, I went Titans just because, again, it's the Panthers.
I took Carolina. I didn't think that their performance against the Cowboys was all that bad until the fourth quarter. I think they're looking for a bounce back, and I think Tennessee might be a decent team to do it against. If you give them 4 points, I'll take it. Jacksonville, Houston. This was I hate this spread. Jacksonville's a 1.5 favorite on the road.
Yeah, I took the Jags. Just because I think, we're going to see more, kind of keep them rolling. And I think Texans, I mean, again, they'll be rolling, but I feel like that's just, Jags are just going to barely inch them out. So, yeah.
I took Houston. Look, they're balling out on offense down there. I think CJ Stroud made one of the best passes I've seen all season, and his deep ball to Tank Dell. 50 air yards on the run without stepping into it after he redirected his receiver. Like, man, that was an incredible throw. It's super hard for me to pick against them the way that their offense is clicking, and Jacksonville's been kind of up and down for me. So I don't feel good about picking either side, but I did take the Texans. I got New Orleans and Atlanta. I guess somebody has to win the NFC South. Atlanta's a 1.5 favorite at home.
Yeah, I actually took the Saints on this.
I did too. I feel like Atlanta's just not using all of their pieces properly. New Orleans has kind of been sneaky winning some tight games, and the AFC or the NFC South just blows so bad. Like, you couldn't pay me to watch this one. You really couldn't. Tampa Bay and Indy. Colts are 2.5 favorites at home.
Yeah, I actually ended up going with the Bucks, just because. Sorry, I think they did pretty decently against the Niners defense. Pretty good. They were in that game kind of, and I don't really. I trust the Bucks to kind of bounce back and have a better week, despite even still scoring 14 against that Niners.
I think this is going to be a tight game, to be honest with you, and I don't think either pick is necessarily bad. But I also took the Bucks mostly because, I think Baker Mayfield has had a better season than people are giving him credit for. Indy's kind of been just this side of average, it's not anything superb. That I think Tampa Bay can flash something and win the game. I got Rams at the Cardinals. Arizona is a 1.5 favorite at home.
Yeah, I got the Rams here just because I know they're getting, Williams back. Hopefully he performs, I need him to. So we'll see, I think, a better, more filled out offense here. So
I took the Rams, and I have no reason why. It's as simple as that, dude. It's a 1.5. Both of them have kind of been mediocre. This, I don't know what to do with this. I just took the Rams for no reason. I got Cleveland and Denver. Broncos are a 1.5 favorites at home, and I think this is sneaky going to be game of the week.
Don't be saying that yet.
I said snake. I said sneaky.
Yeah,
sneaky.
I did actually end up taking the Broncos as well. I know they're kind of riding hot, even though they've been playing struggling weeks, performance teams, Definitely, no fluke from the Bills. But no, I did end up taking the Broncos just because I think, we're going to see a less explosive Browns offense. So, yeah.
It's super hard for me to pick against Denver at this point in time, only because they have been playing so well the past few weeks. But I took Cleveland just because I think that the Broncos haven't seen a defense like the Browns yet. I think that the Browns are going to surprise some people and really rein in Denver and kind of make them look as bad as they did last year, to be honest. All right, I have Kansas City and Vegas. Chiefs are 9.5 favorites on the road. I feel like we're going the same way on this one.
Oh.
Oh.
I don't know. I feel like I went somewhere different. I'm going Raiders just because that spread is just too big for me.
Wow.
I think the Raiders are a little bit better now that they have, a better coach calling plays, and they're kind of in games more that their team is playing with some actual energy. So I'm thinking they're going to be able to keep this close. I mean, I didn't really trust the Chiefs offense this week. Again, some of those drop passes were not just on Patrick Mahomes, but yeah.
Okay, well, I took Kansas City. I think I kind of agree with you in the idea that like Vegas does look better, right? But I think the talent discrepancy is just too big to not favor Kansas City here. All things considered, I don't know that Vegas's offense competes well enough with Kansas City's defense to keep even a mediocre Chiefs offense within 10. Like I thought that was a relatively easy spread for being 9.5, but I inevitably that means that the Chiefs are going to lose again this week, and I'm just going to get shit on. All right. This is going to be the game that both Noah and I have our eyes glued to. Buffalo, Philly. I had the Eagles -3 at home.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure we can just, I'm Bills.
Yeah, and I'm going Eagles. It's just, it is what it is, man. We gotta take our teams this week, right? You can't help it.
Exactly.
All right. I got Baltimore at the Chargers. The Ravens are 3.5 favorites on the road.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I went with the Ravens here just because, again, Ravens have been looking pretty good. They're going to keep rolling. Chargers defense still kind of thin, so yeah.
Yeah, and especially after the offensive performance that we saw from the Chargers, I think this was a pretty easy Baltimore pick for me. And then last game of the week, Chicago at Minnesota. The Vikings are 3.5 favorites.
I actually ended up going Bears, even though I know, against my better, thoughts, I went Bears just because I think, the Bears were looking pretty good. They kind of just lost that game in the end, but they were still offensively performing. I think they're going to be performing yet again. I think they're going to just barely win this one.
I wanted to pick the Bears, but then I remembered Josh Dobbs exists and went Vikings. How do you root against that man, dude? I will, man, salute to that guy. All right. I think that's going to wrap us up for this week. I hope you enjoy your long weekend of football. By all means, I'm going to veg out on the couch starting from Thursday at noon until Monday night. Like that, even the college games on Saturday, dude, I'm hyped. Anyway, I think that wraps us up here. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next week.